Okay, so before I get into this video, I want to give a quick shout out to demonocracy.info for this website and this visualization that we're going to go over today. I'm going to leave a link in the description so you guys can follow it, but basically this is going to give you a visualization of the entirety of the world's value in dollar form. So it's going to kind of be able to break it down and show you guys what the entire world's monetary system looks like, what all of the value in the world, and where all of that value is stored. So in this video, I'm going to be covering all of the world's value, how it ties with Bitcoin, and what happens if some of this money starts going into Bitcoin. Where could that potentially boost the prices for Bitcoin moving forward? Because guys, this is a speculative market. My job here is to speculate and kind of give you guys different perspectives and what I think going forward, because it's important to really just try and lay the blueprint for a good speculative mindset. Now, what that means is I always have people come up to me and ask, hey, how far is Bitcoin going to go in the next 5 years? Is it going to go to 100,000, or is it going to go sideways here forever, or is it going to go completely to $0 and just fall off the face of the earth? I get this asked so much, and while these are all valid questions, it's important to lay out a solid blueprint and kind of base your speculative mindset on. Now, what I mean by that is take your tools, and for example, we're going to use this as a tool. Now, this kind of shows you the entire valuation of the world. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to kind of decide how much of this money could go into Bitcoin potentially, and where that could potentially take Bitcoin. Now, for me to say, oh, it's going to $100, but not have any sort of substance backing that assumption, then that's not going to be very believable for the average person. What you want to do is give a good speculation of where you think price could go, but at the same time give some good information as to why you think that. I hear so many people all the time, especially in cryptocurrency, XRP to $1 million or Bitcoin to $1 trillion, and I'm just sitting there thinking like, okay, where do you even come up with these numbers? First off, where is your information? Where are your sources backing this? And for the most part, almost nobody has anything. They just kind of say these things because they have lots of followers. I don't know, it's weird. But in this video, I'm hoping that we can kind of go over here and cover all of that. So this just goes to show you the 3 richest people in the world. Richest are Warren Buffett, Bill Gates, Carlos Slim. I think that this could have changed since then. Don't quote me on this. This might be a little outdated. But for the most part, this is just kind of giving you a representation of where Bitcoin stands. Now, this is $79 billion. All of these are just slightly smaller than Bitcoin's market cap, which is just insane. These are just singular people that have made riches on their own, whether it's starting companies, whether it's investing, whatever it may be, that together have a greater wealth than the entire valuation of Bitcoin. So Bitcoin is just very young, and it's really cool to see that and kind of interpret that and visualize it against some of these bigger players in the world to kind of give you guys a good understanding and speculation of where we stand. So these are some of the biggest companies. Berkshire Hathaway, ExxonMobil, $330 billion. Microsoft, $470 billion. Google, $500 billion. And Apple, $550 billion. So Bitcoin, compared to these 3 biggest companies here, it's only about a fourth of these, which is just astronomical. These are only singular corporations that we've got here. We all know what Apple does, what Google and Microsoft are, and Bitcoin compared to these is so small, and it's really cool to see all of that. Really just coming and seeing the progression of Bitcoin, where it's going. Now, keep in mind, it could just fall off and die, but I don't think that's possible. Where I see Bitcoin is a reserve currency or a store of value, similar to gold. In fact, I think it could potentially be bigger than gold because of the fact it has so many more use cases for it. With gold, we would buy it, and then we would just kind of hold it in a safe or hold it in the bank and just kind of let it grow and continue to gain value and just use it as a store of value, so a safe haven to put our money away. Now with Bitcoin, we're getting that same store of value, but we can also transact it between each other in about 10-15 minutes on the blockchain, which is just so crazy. We've never been able to do that with a physical substance. And so we have this new internet money that we can transact peer-to-peer. We don't have to have a bank. There's no hidden fees. There's no taxes. There's none of this crap. And so that's why I think that there's such a huge use case for Bitcoin, and why I easily think it could start eating into some of these bigger companies. Because, I mean, if you look at the stock market, I think it's pretty obvious that we're at a point of extreme overvaluation. Now, I'm not going to sit here and try and call a top or anything, but we have been getting a correction, and say that we have another correction, say it corrects another 20-30%, or what even happens if it corrects and makes a crash at about 60% or more. That's going to be very monumental in the way of the world. It's going to be a very testing time to Bitcoin's market cap, because I mean, Bitcoin hasn't really been through a war. It hasn't been through a major crash. It was started after the financial crisis in 2008. So we've been growing and accumulating, but we haven't had any major catalyst kind of springing black swan event where it either causes Bitcoin to go higher or it causes a massive crash in the price. So this is what we're just going to have to wait and see. Say that the stock market is overvalued from where we're at, and we start to correct even more, and say we have a 20, 30, 60% sell-off. What happens if some of that money starts going into Bitcoin because it's now viewed as this new safe haven, which is totally possible. But at the same time, you also have to look at the alternative perspective where, say that the stock market starts crashing. This is the stock market that has way more money than Bitcoin ever has. It's been around for far longer of a time span. And say that when it starts correcting, it starts bleeding Bitcoin with it, which is very possible. And it's something that we're just going to have to wait and see as we progress further along in Bitcoin's maturation and market cycle. Because I mean, say Bitcoin takes up 550 billion. It matches Apple's market cap. That would be a lot of money. In fact, that would be just under 3 times as much of where we're at right now. So a 3x in market cap. That's just a lot. That's a lot of money, guys. That's a lot of cryptocurrencies that would be seeing huge gains because of that. We'd have some very nice risers. And so there's plenty of money to be made here. And that's only one singular corporation here. This is a market that's tapping into the world's reserve. This is something I can transact with somebody in Sweden. I can transact with somebody in Russia or China, wherever it may be. I can talk to them. I can communicate value through them with the blockchain, which is just so crazy. It's just astronomical. It's something we haven't seen before, whereas these singular companies are making this much money, but we now have a way to transact with the world and unite our entire monetary system. So that's why I'm so passionate about Bitcoin moving forward. I see such great cases for it in the long run. So this is going to show you the valuation of gold and silver. Currently $2.5 trillion worth of value inside of these. Now, to put that into perspective, if Bitcoin had $2 trillion worth of market cap, that would boost Bitcoin's value to about $115,000 per BTC. Now, if the entirety of this market cap went into Bitcoin, $2.5 trillion, that would boost it to probably $140,000, if not a little higher than that, which is just, that's crazy, guys. That's so much money, yet it's not even that much money compared to the big scheme of things of where the entire value stacks up. I'm not going to be one to say that Bitcoin's going to overtake gold. I think that gold's always going to be around because it's always been around since the beginning of time. If you go back and look through history, it's always been the store of value. It's what kings use. And I don't think that's going to change anytime soon. I mean, you still have Russia, you still have these other countries in the Middle East. They're all accumulating gold right now. I don't know if they're accumulating Bitcoin as much, but they're definitely accumulating gold because they foresee something happening in the future, whether it's a crash, whether it's a war, whatever it may be. There's countries that are accumulating gold and precious metals. So I'm not going to be the one to say that Bitcoin's going to overtake this, but it is possible that some of this money starts flooding back into Bitcoin because Bitcoin could be viewed in the future as this new form of stability or this new asset class and that we use as store value. So that's the entirety of the precious metal market. Now, this is where we start getting into some pretty massive amounts of value. We have bank money at $50 trillion and base money at $28 trillion. So bank money is what's accessible. If you go to a bank, need to withdraw $10,000, it's what they store there. It's what corporations have on hand and what they can pay out. And it's also what we as individuals have on us. So if I had $5 in my pocket, this coincides with bank money. And so that takes up $50 trillion. Base money is more of all the electronic numbers of money. This is what we have like on our cards, all the electronic money that we send and receive. Not only that, but this also makes up whatever banks loan out. So this is kind of a problem. What we see with banks is banks loan out a lot of money. So if you put your money into a bank, banks are only required to hold 10% of what money you put in. So the rest of the 90%, so say, to put that into perspective, if you put in $10,000 in a bank, the bank would then loan out 90% of that that you put in. And so $9,000 is now just getting put out wherever the bank pleases, wherever it wants to go put it. And that's why we had this problem in 2008, was we had banks loaning out all of this money, creating these huge credit bubbles. And then eventually the housing market tanked and we had a huge sell-off. And then people lost so much money. I actually have a story to tell you guys. When I was living in LA, I met this guy. And he was a Mexican immigrant. And he came to America shortly before the 2008 financial crisis. He had a good job. He was making good money. And he went out and bought like 4 houses on credit. Not only that, but he went and bought a bunch of cars on credit. Now, this is obviously a stupid decision, completely ill-advised, not a smart financial move whatsoever. But he did it, and he made these mistakes. And what happened was, once the financial crisis came about and it crashed, he lost all of those houses. The money said, or the banks came to him and they said, "Hey, where's our money?" And he said he couldn't pay it. And so they took all of his houses, took all of his cars, and then on top of that, they charged him 4 times the amount of all of that's value. And so he now owns 4 times what he owed on 4 different houses, and then all of the different cars he had on top of that. And so here's this Mexican immigrant, never had a dime to his name, comes out here to America. Banks manipulate him. They allow him to take out these massive loans that they knew he couldn't pay back, and now he's screwed for the rest of his life. The reason he was talking to me was because he was looking for somebody to help sponsor his legal fees for his courts and his lawsuits against the bankers, and I was not willing to do that. You know, if you're going to make those sort of mistakes, I'm not going to be liable for that. Like, I understand that you went through that problem, but me personally, I'm not willing to kind of step into that and make that a problem myself. But that just goes to show you guys how these credit bubbles and how the banks loaning out money kind of just wreck so many people. And this wasn't the only person, obviously. There's so many other thousands of people that lost everything to these banks because they took out these massive credit loans, and what happened? They couldn't pay it back, and then the bank needed it back. So the bank is just raping and pillaging the common person through these false means and just creating their own money out of thin air. And it's just super corrupt. That's why, literally the reason why I got into Bitcoin. I was really into like learning about banking and how corrupt it was. And as soon as my buddy told me about Bitcoin and the overall decentralized aspects and how it's deflationary, as soon as he told me that, I immediately knew that this was going to be something so big. I didn't have to look at the chart. I just knew inside of me that this was something that was going to fundamentally rewrite history. And so I bought my first Bitcoin at $450, and I've been here ever since. Now we start getting into even more substantial areas of value. These are the government bonds in the world, which basically just means the debt. Now, a government bond is a fancy piece of paper that somebody, anytime you're taking out a loan that you can't get from a bank. So if, say I need to take out a loan of $1 million or $1 billion, the bank's only going to be able to cover so much of that. And so I would write a bond and then put it out there, and then the average person, they would take that bond, and then it would say, you loan me this amount of money and I will pay it back with interest. And that's how debt is created, in a sense. And so these companies will write these bonds, or governments will make these bonds, whoever it may be, and then the banks will come through, buy those bonds, and then they will repay them, and then they'll make a profit because of the interest. So that's kind of the way that these bonds work a little bit. This is just the debt in the world, because this is somebody that is looking to take a loan out and then pay you interest. So that's creating that sense of debt, whoever is making those bonds. And that's worth $58 trillion. Recently, we're starting to get a little bit of a decline in this uptrend we've been in bonds. And if this thing comes crashing down, guys, this is going to be a major catalyst for either a financial crisis or a crash entirely, and that's what we're moving towards. So it's very weary, and you should watch out for all of this and just pay close attention to what's going on in the world. It's very, very important to understand that, so you can place yourself on the profitable end in the market. I know for me personally, no matter what happens in the world, whether we have a crash, whether we have a depression, whatever it may be, I'm going to be okay, because I know how to strategically place myself on the positive end of these coming events. And that's exactly what I'm trying to do with this YouTube channel, is preach my perspective towards you guys so you can then create your own solutions for whatever it is you're trying to do as a person and just kind of improve the life. Guys, we're all in this together, and it's really important that we help share this knowledge and this wisdom that we all share so that we can in turn just create a better life for the majority of people. Now, $116 trillion. This is all the stocks and corporate bonds in the world. So this is just insane, guys. $116 trillion. Think about how massive this amount of money is. These are corporate bonds and stocks in the world. So Bitcoin's worth $100 billion right now. And even if just some of this wealth trickled in, think about where that would take us. And it's really not that hard to imagine $100,000 Bitcoin when you look at the whole grand scheme of all of this money and all of this wealth just tied into the world. That's just so insane and astronomical. Like currently, the value of Bitcoin is worth about like 10 of these little trucks down here, compared to all of this that's just here. It's insane. I didn't realize how much value is in the world until you start to see something like this that can kind of put it into a visual perspective. That's why I love this website so much. So $290 trillion of value of all private business, real estate in the world. Now, this is going to be something that's monumental for and pushing towards cryptocurrency. And it's something you're already starting to see with a lot of different cryptos. What we've had the problem of transacting real estate value between one another. There's a lot of different technicalities and paperwork that goes into attaining land and buying land and selling land, and it's just this really complicated mess of things, and it takes a lot of time to do. But with cryptocurrency, we can program these smart contracts that will just kind of allow us to send and receive the lands or the real estate value between each other anonymously, decentralized, peer-to-peer. Not only that, but really quickly. And we can kind of skip through all of that paperwork in a sense because it's kind of already programmed into the smart contract or whatever the platform is using it for the real estate market. And guys, $290 trillion that's ridiculous. We can't even fathom that amount of wealth because it's something we haven't seen before. And so with cryptocurrency, we now have a way to tap into that hidden wealth that we've never had before. And Bitcoin's going to be the thing that ties all of that together. It's going to be the gold in the new age or whatever we have, whatever currency we use, whether it's Bitcoin, whether it's, I don't know, Ripple, just kidding. But you guys know what I'm saying. Bitcoin is going to be that store of value that's going to tie in all of this. So say there's say there's $250 trillion worth of real estate. Say if $50 trillion of that went into Bitcoin. That's hundreds and thousands of dollars worth of Bitcoin right there. That would put Bitcoin worth probably at least $500,000, which is just astronomical. That's insane. Maybe even upwards of $1 million. So that just goes to show you like what's to come into crypto based off of this peer-to-peer system on the blockchain that we have. We are now having a way to tap into this hidden wealth in the real estate market. It's insane, guys. It gets me so excited thinking about all of this. Now we're getting into some just astronomical numbers that I've honestly never even thought about. I didn't even know what a quadrillion was until I read this, and I'll just be honest about that. 1 quadrillion, value of all derivatives in the world. Now I'm going to go through and read this because I feel like it's important to understand it. Derivatives are a dangerous mess. They are imaginary, yet very real. Derivatives are casino-style bets on value of whatever they choose to bet on, in contract form, made by banks, overseen by no one, because no one clearly understands the intertwined web of mess of derivatives. Pick something of value, make bets on the future value of something, add contract, and you have a derivative. Banks make massive profits off derivatives, and when the bubble bursts, chances are the taxpayer will end up with the bill. This visualizes the total coverage of for derivatives, similar to insurance companies' total coverage for all cars. Does not mean all insurance on all cars will be paid out simultaneously. It's just kind of what they have in store of things. Sometimes banks make self-canceling derivative contracts, examples, 2 times banks enters 2 times contract. Contract 1, bank pays 10 million to bank 2 if price goes up. Contract 2, bank 2 pays 10 million to bank 1 if price goes up. This 1000x, and then they go brag to each other about the size of their derivative portfolio. No one can really track who owes who to whom in derivatives. It's a vast, confusing mess, but an unannounced event such as Fed chairwoman Janet Yellen suddenly raising interest rates to 5% would very likely implode the entire derivative system and the banks along with it, because cascading domino effect, and some bank likely would have a bad hand on derivative bets and go bankrupt. Some fool, maybe another bank, would own the bankrupt bank stock and asset and also face bankruptcy. This would cause a loss of confidence in banks, and everyone would start pulling their money to safeguard it, causing a cascading effect of bank insolvency. In short, the entire financial world hangs by a thin string, ready to be destroyed in a domino effect due to the unforeseen events, crisis, that causes value of investments to fall, and derivatives exacerbates the effects. But anyways, that kind of explains what a derivative is, how derivatives are used. It's just like a contract. So I loved how they talked about once the domino starts to fall, it's all just going to come crashing down. People are going to be losing faith in banks. Not only that, but the banks are going to be losing faith in themselves. And that's already what we're starting to see, guys. We're already starting to see this domino effect, and that's what that's the reason why Bitcoin was made after the 2008 financial crisis, is because those little pieces starting to fall right there. That was the catalyst event where people realized, oh hey, these banks are a little bit shady and a little bit corrupt. Maybe I shouldn't trust them so much with my money. And so we're starting to see the dominoes fall, and it's just bit by bit by bit, and then the bigger pieces are start to fall, and then it's going to come down tumbling so quickly that we won't even realize it. Most people won't see it coming, and most people haven't right now. And so for this to start crumbling, and for people to lose lack of faith in banks, and for banks to lose lack of faith in themselves, a lot of that money has to go somewhere. Now, I don't think it's going to be going into the stock market, because a lot of these stocks have been propped up because of the banks. A lot of this money inside of stocks is from the banks. And so when they start pulling out of that, where is it going to go? My guess is it's going to go into precious metals and possibly Bitcoin. Like I said, Bitcoin is so speculative right now, and it's so new that it's hard to say that, well, all of these banks are just going to funnel everything they have into this new speculative currency that we don't know is going to be here for the long haul. And that's a possibility, but for the most part, I think you can guarantee on silver, gold, some of these precious metals, and that's why we could see a massive rise in silver's value itself. Not only that, but gold's going to have a rally as well, just because of the fact, once this money starts leaving and the banks need to put it somewhere else before this whole thing just goes kaboom, then they're going to start putting it into safe havens. Now, that could be Bitcoin, but it's most definitely going to be precious metals, because that's what we have used previously. So that's $1 quadrillion. That's just insane. I could not even imagine. It's hard to say how much money could go into Bitcoin, just because there's so much of it out there. And it's going to tie in a lot of what we've yet to be able to get into. So then you've got 1 quadrillion. Now this is all money and assets in the world shown in physical $100 bills. This is the big scheme of things. You've got derivatives, private business, real estate, scrutinized debt in listed stocks, government bonds, bank money, base money, and gold. Now you have a more risky to least risky. You've got, on the more risky side of things, derivatives, non-monetary commodities, corporations, municipal bonds and listed stocks, government bonds and treasury bills, paper money, and gold. Now, Bitcoin, and the big scheme of all of this net wealth, is just a little tiny corner of this. It doesn't mean very much, but it's there. And that's how much Bitcoin would be valued compared to this giant scheme of things. So that's just monumental, guys. We're only in the little corner. If it only took like this big of a piece, Bitcoin would be worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. And so I really wanted to show you guys this graphic, because it kind of explains where the value is, where the value comes from, how it coexists with itself. But then I wanted to tie it together in a way of how Bitcoin coexists with the entire value of the world. Now, because it's such a speculative industry, a lot of people don't know where it's going. In fact, nobody truly knows where Bitcoin's going. I could sit here and say, oh, it's going to $1 million, but at the end of the day, I don't know that. No one else knows that, and we just have to wait and see what happens in the market. What we do know is Bitcoin is a very, very monumental change in the way that we've sent and received value. Before, we've always had to rely on a third party, whether it's a bank or whether it's some other form of centralized entity. They come through and then we use trust to send that store of value. Whether it's sending our money, we have to rely on a bank to trust that that money gets sent in a quick and efficient way. And what happens is that's not the case. Banks loan out your money. They're only allowed to, they only have to take 10, they only have to keep 10% of that. So they'll loan out your money and then it's gone, and then they create credit bubbles. Not only that, but they tax you, they give you fees, they give you all of this noise in between, and they're just constantly taking all of your value, all of your buying power is just getting taken and eaten away. And so with Bitcoin, we now have a way to send and receive value peer-to-peer, no fees, no taxes, and I'm sure that'll come eventually, but for the most part, it's very, very lucrative in what it can accomplish. We have a way to send and receive value on a blockchain. Not only that, but we now have a way to tap into some of this new wealth that's hidden. We now have a way to tap into some of this hidden wealth. I like to use the example of real estate because this is something we haven't really had a way of sending and receiving back and forth, especially on a global scale. If I wanted to buy some land in China, I'd have to go through a lot of crap to be able to do that. It would take a lot of time. There'd be lots of paperwork. There'd be lots of fees, I'm sure, to even get that to work because I'd have to go to a bank to get the money to buy it. And it would just be such a complex process, whereas with Bitcoin, we can tie the value of a plot of land on a cryptocurrency, and we can send it through a smart contract or something along those lines, which is just insane. And it allows us to tap into this hidden wealth that we've never had. So that's a $250 trillion market in itself. Bitcoin's worth $100 billion right now. I've said it a million times, and I'm just trying to get that through to you guys to help you understand where we are in the grand scheme of things. This is such an undervalued asset for as far as what it can accomplish. You guys know, fair and square, I'm a Bitcoin bull. I see the longevity of this project and this group of people trying to create something new. It's not only is that creating a new way to transact value, but just the idea of Bitcoin is adding so much more value into the world. You have all these different crypto creators and developers making new and better improved ideas to help coexist on this great the Internet of Things on the blockchain is what you could call it. And so I'm just super excited to be here with you guys to experience all of this. It's going to be a great time to see where Bitcoin goes in the future. And so by this video, I just hoped to cover the entire world's value, how Bitcoin kind of ties along with that value, and just to show you kind of what would happen if some of that value came into Bitcoin, where it could put Bitcoin as far as a speculation purpose. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you found this video helpful, always remember to leave a like, comment, and subscribe to my channel for more updates in the future. I appreciate you guys so much, and I just love that I'm able to give you guys my perspective and kind of just discuss that with you. I think it goes a long ways in helping everybody else just obtain their dreams and becoming who they want to be. So once again, thank you so much for watching this video. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace out.